Whether you're a world-class athlete or a podcaster like me, we all understand the importance of mental and physical well-being and proper recovery for top-notch performance. That's why I'm excited that Unified Healing is sponsoring this podcast. Unified Healing is a new and super innovative global network of wellness centers powered by Energy Enhancement System, or EE System. If you haven't heard of the EE System, you'll want to listen up. This technology promotes wellness, deep relaxation, purification, and rejuvenation. In hundreds of locations across the globe, access to a center is easy and affordable. Interested in experiencing the EE System technology for yourself? Go to unifiedhealing.com/bluewire to learn more and find a center near you. That's unifydhealing.com/bluewire. No material or testimonials on the Unified Healing website are intended to be viewed as medical advice or a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment and before undertaking a new healthcare regimen, including EE System.
From your favorite source for Chicago White Sox talk, delivering news, interviews, analysis, and more. This is the Sox Machine Podcast with your hosts, Jim Margulis, James Fegan, and Josh Nelson.
Thanks, Rob, and welcome to a new episode of the Sox Machine Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Nelson, and it's Wednesday night, May 22nd, as we record this show, as the Chicago White Sox got thumped again by the Toronto Blue Jays, losing 9-2, and they lost 2 out of 3 in Toronto. This 39-game hell stretch for the White Sox is now off to a 1-5 start. There is some good. Garrett Crochet was outstanding again. There's some bad. Eloy Jimenez is hurt again. And there's the ugly. Nick Nastrini got rocked again. And it raises some questions of what the near future outlook is for this White Sox starting rotation. We'll take our best guess and preview the upcoming series as the Baltimore Orioles visit the South Side. Joining me are Sox Machine's beat reporter James Fegan and managing editor Jim Margulis. And gentlemen, the White Sox lose 2 out of 3 to Toronto. They lost game 1 9-3. They won game 2 5-0. We'll talk about that in a moment. But they lost game 3 again 9-2. This greatly helps me with my steak dinner bet that I have with our friend Beefloaf over in the 108. But it's still a really bad result, an ugly result for the White Sox. And to play an oldie from way back in the day when we first launched the podcast, let's play the good, the bad, and the ugly. Starting with the good, Garrett Crochet, 6 scoreless innings, only 2 hits allowed, 1 walk, only struck out 4. In the month of May, in 23 innings, Crochet's only allowed 13 hits, 1 earned run, which was a solo home run. Striking out 27 and walking 4, he's got a 0.39 ERA in 4 starts in the month of May. And Crochet handled the Blue Jays differently by pitching more to contact and avoiding the barrel. And James, as you wrote on Sox Machine earlier this week, Crochet firmly believes he has the command to be a major league starter. And this past start against Toronto proves it. Is that the type of outing, though, that's sustainable for Crochet?
I mean, he really used very little off speed in it. He didn't basically use the sweeper at all, which is kind of the wipeout outing he'd go to get kind of like finish off a lot of counts. Obviously, he's fully capable of striking out people with 98, but it just seemed like people weren't making great contact with his fastball, and he went to it a lot and challenged people in the zone with it a lot, which is what I was... To say the quiet part loud of my feature is that, like, Garrett Crochet doesn't necessarily have good command, but he's able to replicate command in the sense that, like, he has these wide areas to work with in the zone because of, like, what his fastball is doing right now. And just kind of realizing that and pitching off of it and you know, filling it up in there. I think it's... I want to compare it to, like, what Giolito did in his prime, because Giolito still, like, threatened a 10% walk rate all the time. But it's definitely, like, a lot more control over command. But if you're not going to get hurt in these situations, he's kind of eliminated some of the fluke tunneling issues he had with the sweeper where it got hammered. He's not really seeing the he's not paying the cost of just kind of serving it up to guys and still being vulnerable to the homers. He's knowledgeable enough with how to use his cutter and his slider or sweeper behind his four seam, where he's avoiding some of the damage he was taking during that ugly stretch in late April, and has at least enough control where he's consistently not giving himself extra base runners or having to work through traffic, or even that situation where he needs a punch out necessarily to get out of certain innings, because he had so little traffic the other night. He really didn't need to go into that mode very often. He could just kind of challenge with the fastball in good spots where he knows it will work over and over again, and kind of switching to the mode where he needs, one or two punch outs to escape an inning. It never really came up.
The follow-up question I have for you, James, is like Crochet's game log, though, because we know the White Sox, they're trying to play this delicate game, balancing Crochet, go out there, you're our best starting pitcher right now. Go out there and perform so we could win some games, while also monitoring his workload, as this is his first season being an everyday starter for the White Sox, or taking the ball every fifth day and being in this type of routine. The White Sox, though, have not been pushing Crochet to the 100-pitch limit. He's only pitched more than 90 pitches once in this month. He threw 97 against the Guardians back on May 10th. And that's the most he's thrown all season. Crochet's yet to throw 100 pitches in a game. Is that helping in any way? If Crochet knows that the team's not going to let him have a long leash, that it forces him having to live in the strike zone if he does want to go deep into games.
I don't think Crochet, based on the way he's reacted to some early pulls, I don't think he knows about it beforehand very much. Okay. It's funny because I was visiting the Braves clubhouse today to check in with Ronaldo Lopez and talk to their pitching coach, because technically, even though he's cleared 30 starts and 180 innings twice in his career before, he's also kind of a reliever conversion project. And they said, like, this is probably the first time he's going to start on regular rest. Like, we've been doing all these things to give him extended rest or, cut him short in a similar way. Now, the Braves are a lot deeper to kind of cycle in guys who can give them competitive outings, whereas, the White Sox are having trouble counting the 5 starters and having a competitive effort. But I think it's their idea that we're going to try to get him through a whole season, and we're willing to not have him used to going 100 pitches, to not have him really that used to going to 7 innings. It'd be really easy to envision that, second start of the season being his always 7-inning start all year, because getting him the idea of working through a full season or even getting close to a full season is more valuable than these extended high stress outings that are really disappearing from the game for everyone but a few guys anyway. Like, Fedde is their guy who, we're really riding him. Like Petty said multiple times, like, they've told me they're trusting me to do heavy innings, handling it. Like, so Fedde is what that means is, like, Fedde gets basically 10 more pitches than Crochet. Like, I think has he even cleared 100 pitches in an outing at any point this year?
Crochet has not.
Fedde even he has not. He's done 108 when we tried to do a complete game against Tampa. Those type of extended outings they're not really that much more extended what Crochet is doing. So I don't feel like there's like they don't feel there's a big cost to cutting him, 5-10 pitches short of that, given that it's pretty much commonplace in the league at this point.
So, Jim, to follow up on that point that James brought up, I've got 2 questions for you. We'll start with one. Do you want the White Sox to push Crochet? Like, when he's pitching this well, and when a team like Toronto only has got 2 hits against Crochet, do you want to see if Crochet could go a little bit further?
I don't know if there's a whole lot to gain from it, just because of the stakes of the season. Now, if they were in like win now mode and Crochet were, say, in the mode of Davis Martin stepping in and trying to help a team win some games steal some games that they didn't expect to be winning, then I think you'd want to see Garrett Crochet pitch an inning maybe that the bullpen doesn't pitch, especially if there was a heavy workload for the relievers the game before. But with Crochet being one of the few projects this year that might actually apply to next year, I don't know if you want to do anything, I wouldn't call it reckless maybe, but anything that makes you second guess, should we have chased 100 plus pitches in multiple outings just because, we wanted to see him get there versus if he makes 25 plus starts and throws 100 and 40 plus innings in this year after never throwing like 50 at any point, I think that would be a victory enough. So yeah, I think his goals for this season are a little bit different than, say, somebody who had logged that partial season as a starter and is really trying to step into a full-time role. I think it's really ambitious what they're doing already, and I'd rather see him be able to make as many starts as possible versus having some outings where he goes 100 plus pitches and then all of a sudden they realize like, oh, his stuff's diminished. Let's pull back a little bit. I think right now they're on a pretty good program, so stick with that for the time being.
All right, so my second question, as I've always told you, Crochet would be an above-average starting pitcher in the major leagues. I saw in the comments, though, in his last start in Sox Machine, in the game recap that I wrote up, there are some White Sox fans that are considering that the White Sox should deal Garrett Crochet before the trade deadline. Now, my opinion is that's a bit crazy, and I don't think that's very likely to happen as we approach the trade deadline. So I'm against that idea because, one, he's still cheap, and two, the White Sox have multiple years of control, so I think it's a little too early for this conversation. But let's talk about this particular topic anyways, because I'm sure it's going to come up a couple more times before the deadline, Jim. Do you think Garrett Crochet could be available in a trade this season?
It doesn't seem like it. I could be wrong, but it feels like if I'm a team that's acquiring him and he's well beyond whatever workload he's ever amassed at the college level or the pro level, there's obviously no meaningful minor league experience to draw upon, that if you're acquiring him for the stretch run, what kind of Crochet are you going to get? Like, what kind of offer are you going to make for a guy who might not be able to start a postseason game if he's really hit a wall in September or he's completely gassed? That's why it kind of reminds me a little bit of the Luis Roberts Jr. dialogue about trading him, where there were a lot of people who, with some reason, saying that the White Sox should deal him if they're dealing everybody else. If they're not going to contend, why not deal Robert? And then he gets hurt again, and then you have those people saying this is why they should have dealt Robert. And yeah, there is some merit to that. But on the other hand, if teams want to see Robert play more than 100 games in a season, like twice in a row, to understand what kind of player they're getting and how durable he is, I don't know if the offers are going to be what you think they should be for somebody with Robert's ceiling. And I think it's kind of the same thing with Crochet. Whereas if he gets through a whole season, relatively unscathed, maybe he takes a start off here and there to get him across the finish line, but otherwise looks pretty much within the with the grasp of his full powers for most, if not the entire season. I could see him being a lot more appealing over the winter to where teams maybe make a serious offer. They ask Chris Getz, like, how soon do you think you're going to be turning this around? Do you think you'll be in contention by the end of 2026, is it? Or do you really think that you'll be better off in 2027 with what you get for Crochet? I could see those deals coming around, but I think because teams with postseason aspirations won't know exactly what Crochet can do for them, I think the offers might be less than you expect, even though what he's showing right now is really impressive. And the trajectory for his arbitration earnings shouldn't be all that steep.
Yeah, that's why I think the White Sox are probably better off keeping Crochet. But James, what do you think about that particular topic? Because I think this is something we're going to be asked about.
I just don't get it as a contender getting for him. It's like someone being like, well, I'm selling my Ferrari. It runs great. It's under 10,000 miles. I would not go over 45 in it if you value your personal safety. I'd be like, I don't know. I'll look for other options. It doesn't seem like it fits my needs.
Well, a player that may not fit any contender's needs because he's back on the injured list, and this is the bad from the Toronto series. Eloy Jimenez strained his left hamstring as he scored in Game 2 of the series. And like I mentioned, he's been placed on the injured list as Zach DeLoach replaces him on the 26-man roster. DeLoach is already the 43rd different player to join the White Sox 26-man roster so far in 2024. It's May 22nd. White Sox are easily going to be passing that 50 different players to play in the majors this year for them threshold. But James, with Eloy back on the injured list, what do you think the plan is for the White Sox at DH with Jimenez back on the mend?
It sounds like a rotation from here on out. It certainly could see Gavin Sheets taking a lot of it. It allows them to not play Tommy Pham in the outfield every day at the age of 36, as we saw them do today. Certainly Andrew Vaughn will probably play there. I think it becomes a bit more of a one probably gets Gavin Sheets back in everyday duty and probably fits them a bit more, getting Dominic Fletcher in center field and having more coherent defensive like outfield alignments, as Jim wrote about on Wednesday. But it seems just like they don't have there's not like a next man up for DH, which is kind of like the whole thing when he got hurt earlier this season. But maybe there's a bit more rotation of outfield corner bats, first base guys that you can kind of cycle through there and try to piece together a competitive lineup, but not really make the mark. I will say, like, they're, as far as like hitting the 50, they're getting into like this cycle where they're running out of new players to really try out that are currently on the roster. They're going to have to aggressively work the waiver wire. They want to keep up the pace that they're at. Like Lenyn Sosa's just off the minor league IL. Now they have a bit more like infielders to work with. They can't just DFA and call up Jack Remillard over and over again. There's things that affect just keeping up that pure pace of 20 players a month that they were on. But we'll see. I don't put it past them that who was thinking about Corey Julks as an outfield rotation or factoring into their DH mix even 2 weeks ago. But here we are.
Yeah, that end of the season Sporkle is going to be tough. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, I always wonder when Zach Remillard gets DFA'd if they just say, like, you'd be stupid to go anywhere else. We're going to need you again. Sit tight.
Why do we need to tell him something his agent might have already said?
Yep.
Jim, I hope Eloy does return to the White Sox soon, but I worry that his body now, even though he's 27 years old, I don't know if Eloy's body is meant for the 162-game grind. And not only does this impact his trade market, I think the White Sox mind was already made up. Like the front office, like, this is it for Eloy. We're going to be buying out his contract after this season. We're going to move on. He's going to be a free agent. Maybe come spring training, if he doesn't have a home, we can entertain that idea if we are short on bats. But I felt like this season was going to be the last anyways, but some White Sox fans, again, going back to the trade topic, were hoping that Eloy would hit well enough to get traded before the deadline. I don't see that as a possibility now, because if teams can't count on Crochet or what form of Crochet they will get, how can any team trade for Eloy not having any confidence that he could stay on the field?
Yeah, it's not so much as 162-game grind. It's a 90-foot grind. He can't survive. Just like it's not, injuries from laying out for a ball or hitting a wall on the warning track. Even the pectoral injury was like it was a kind of a misguided effort, but at least it was an effort. Pulling up lane between third and home on a play we're definitely going to score. I mean, that's the reason, like, when you're watching him run, you always hold your breath. And even, John Schriffen, to go into like a really brief Schriffen minute here, his "oh no" call for Jimenez's injury was muted, like almost like he's getting used to it, and he just got here in terms of not feeling guaranteed that Jimenez is going to survive a trip around the base path. So that's why I think, they're just running out the clock on him. And I wonder, obviously they don't want to see him get hurt, but they almost have to be counting on it at some point, or at least say, well, now that Jimenez is out, at least we can have an outfield where everybody's more or less where they should be standing, and have, Gavin Sheets like spare his wins above replacement by having him DH or first base rather than losing value every game he plays in right field just because he doesn't have any sort of range. I think there's at least that kind of contingency, but it always seems to happen, or happens often enough, when Jimenez looks like he's starting to heat up and entertain the trade value. He took that selfie with the CN Tower behind him in Rogers Center, so he's starting to become like more and more of the White Sox social efforts. And then it happens again, and that's when the reflexive comments come out. So, I think maybe the one benefit is that the White Sox didn't waste time putting him on the injured list. Like, they didn't do the whole, let's wait 3 days, see what happens. Because they just didn't have enough permutations to run with for like a credible lineup, credible defensive outfield. The combination of that with Jimenez out, so gives Zach Deloche, even though he wasn't necessarily like a worthy or really pressing for a call up with the way he was hitting in Charlotte. At least he has some form of batting eye to tell balls from strikes. So let's see what that looks like at the major league level. But yeah, it's more or less a matter of course now for Jimenez with how he gets hurt and just the unremarkable plays that make it happen.
It just sucks. Being 27 years old and like, can I count on my hamstring not to blow up on me if I round third? And I think anyone that's ever I pulled a hamstring and I cannot run. I'm a terrible runner to begin with, but I have troubles, like even running a 5K, worried if I'm going to pull that muscle. And yeah, just the amount of injuries that Eloy's gone through so far. It's 758 possible games in Eloy's career. He's only played at 472, which is 62.2% of the games that he was eligible to play. And in 2024, he's mostly been DH. He wasn't even in the outfield, as Jim mentioned. He was just running the bases. So we'll see how the White Sox handle DH while Eloy is back on the injured list, and we'll see how quickly Eloy rejoins the White Sox. And then we get into the ugly. And this is a larger topic here because the White Sox, outside of Fedde and Crochet, and I guess we could go with Clevenger and Flexen as long as they are currently on the team. But this last spot in the starting rotation seems to be a revolving door, and I don't know if the White Sox have a good grasp on what they are trying to accomplish here, especially in the last couple of weeks. Nick Nastrini had a really rough night in Toronto. 3 1/3 innings. He allowed 7 hits, 9 runs, 8 of them earned. He walked 6, didn't strike out anyone. And in his last 2 starts in the majors, Nastrini has allowed 24 base runners in 6 1/3 innings. That's almost a 4 whip. Think about that. A 4 whip. That's allowing at least 1 run every single inning. Yeah, just not good numbers. And James, I don't want to be mean because he's still green and he's still learning to be a major league starter. And he had the mindset coming into spring training that he was ready to be in the majors. Nick Nastrini's not ready for the majors. So any word if the White Sox are going to give Nastrini another chance, which would be at home, but it would be against the same Toronto Blue Jays team on Monday, Memorial Day.
Pedro Grifol said outright that he will pitch in the next Blue Jays series. And, at least, pregame, it was, he's kind of here. Permanent always seems weird because it's not like he's going to be here until like literally he dies, but it's at least not supposed to be a temporary shuffle in and out move the way the last one was. So they kind of did this endorsement of him before this outing, which is just, of course, how things have gone these last 3-4 years is, words immediately backfiring in cartoonish ways. But I don't know, like the guy who debuted looked fine, a little green. The person of the last 2 major league starts is just putting himself in, like, he's got good stuff, but like very few people have the sort of good stuff that, can survive putting himself behind the count and with like extremely uncompetitive misses that make the hitter like not really have to think about anything except like their honey hole. And there was some weirdness, like especially like the 2 second inning rally where he had some times where he was ahead or had 2 strike pitches get hit, even when he was, throwing some of his what are supposed to be plus breaking balls. But the big thing that I feel like has stuck out to me, I mean, it doesn't seem like a crazy thing to say, 6 walk outings, that scouts who are skeptical or outright saying he wasn't ready coming out AAA just said like the command wasn't there. It's still a reliever risk profile, and so far it's looked like kind of a reliever risk profile where he'll have some innings where he sets himself up when it works, and he'll have some points where he starts missing. And like if he was on a 1 and 2 inning basis, you get him out of there before he ran into trouble too badly. And then as a starter, he just kind of has to work through it. And it's really hard to undo those sorts of innings when they start compiling on each other and you're behind in seemingly every situation. And, the sixth, seventh hitter at bat knows your slider isn't within a foot of the plate and just eliminates like half your arsenal very easily. So yeah, he got burned in multiple changeups, and I wonder what the pitch calling was a little bit, but just like the main thing, it's like the command was just nowhere close to what it needed to be successful. So hopefully he can go get it next time out because they're going to give it to him.
Well, James, it can't be the pitch calling fault because Martin Maldonado was catching this game. It can't be Maldonado's fault. It's Nastrini's fault.
I mean, I think Nastrini definitely did plenty where we don't have to like search for alternative reasons. Like this debunks Maldonado's reputation, but nothing was good. So I don't know if there's what Maldonado could have done to look good, even if like seeing him call back-to-back changeups and gets hammered doesn't look good for him individually that moment. I don't know. I don't think anyone has watched that and they're like, he's just got to throw the knuckle curve. It's aces. Just throw it over and over again. Like there wasn't anything working to get anyone off his fastball in any meaningful way, and then there wasn't good command of his fastball. So I don't think Corey Lee would have caught a no-hitter on that.
No, but Jim, we can now put James in the Martin Maldonado fan camp. That's what happened right here. James defended Maldonado. I'm kidding, everyone.
I think generally he probably knows what he's doing.
I was tempted on your recap for Crochet's shutout to say like White Sox been shutout despite Corey Lee's best efforts.
Jim, you speculated in one of the Sox Machine minor keys that when this spot came up and they were pushing Clevenger back a day, that Drew Thorpe could have been in line to make this start instead of Nastrini because of the open 40-man spot. Now, that 40-man spot ended up going to Zach DeLoach. But do you think the White Sox should have given Thorpe that chance Wednesday night instead of Nastrini?
Well, DeLoach is already on the 40-man, so the spot is still open on the 40-man. I feel better about saying that Thorpe was worth a shot based on the way Nastrini was doing okay at Charlotte, but not necessarily changing minds, or at least throwing quality strikes because he'd given up 5 homers in 3 starts. He was throwing a lot of strikes, whether they were the good kind or whether they were misses outside the strike zone is a different matter. But yeah, I was kind of went out on a limb thinking like, oh, this is all lining up nicely for Thorpe because Clevenger is starting on Wednesday. And then normally, if they're going to kind of play games like moving starters around, they don't necessarily list them. But in this case, they did bump Clevenger back. So there's a little bit of egg on my face. But yeah, I mean, I guess the one thing is that you don't have Thorpe making his major league debut against Baltimore. But considering Baltimore just got swept, maybe it's a case of, can't necessarily let the opponents dictate the timing of call-ups, but it's probably fine that Thorpe isn't up yet. But I imagine he could have fared just as well as Nastrini did.
So let's speculate. A month from now, what does the White Sox starting rotation look like on June 23rd as the White Sox wrap up their series on the road against Detroit and come back home against Los Angeles Dodgers? So, James, if you had to guess, who is in the White Sox 5-man starting rotation a month from now?
I mean, it's a more interesting question like 2 months from now. Because I think like at this point, the only real wild card is like, does Nastrini crater in some way where they have to shuffle another option? And if that's the case, maybe Cannon could be there, but he hasn't been great either in AAA, which is hard to say because it's just like a really hard place to pitch, especially if you're not missing all the bats in the world, and sometimes even if you do. The fact that Thorpe didn't even get bumped up to AAA and all this takes a little steam out of the idea that he's beat up that quickly. So the most boring thing I could say is like, even though like to both his credit and detriment, Soroka's looked really relievery in his relief appearances. Like he's throwing the ball harder than ever, but also wilder than ever. like he looks like he might be a good reliever, but also like he's not looking like someone like, oh yeah, this is the starter working relief. He looks like someone's just letting it rip the way you typically see. But I think it'd probably be the easiest to slide him in if you just thought like, oh, this Nastrini situation is just completely untenable, and they're not that Kansas City hasn't been good and it was over 10 games over 500, but like there's not the sort of offense that he debuted against in their schedule very easily. I guess the Cubs are struggling, but the kind of soft landing for him to like kind of get right. One, they face Toronto. I guess that's, the second worst offense in the AL. So it's as good of a chance as any for him to kind of stabilize. But if things are going to, if things don't improve for him, I feel like before they really reset the rotation with the trade deadline and everything like that, the easiest thing is probably to just go to Soroka again. I know we'd all just love for Tanner Banks to take place to start a slot.
Yeah.
Become a candidate for opening day start in 2025, but I don't know. I'm thinking that won't happen until August.
Okay. So to follow up, you think it'll be more interesting what the rotation is 2 months from now. So let's play that game, James. Who is in the White Sox starting rotation 2 months in late July?
Well, like assuming that they've made their trades as opposed to like Eric Petty's in there, but only for another week.
Put on your prediction hat on. Who's getting traded, James? Come on.
Then I would say like you take out Fetty. If I think like Flexen would be like literally like the actual deadline day deal where like people are waiting for like a big trade, and like 2 hours before the deadline like passes and says like the Mariners are adding Chris Flexen as a swingman. Like, boo! Give us real news.
Nightingale would be first with that one.
Right.
Yeah, that would be Nightingale Flexen. Come on.
So like if you remove those two, then like you can put Cannon back up there, and seemingly that's the time for Thorpe. I don't think there's anyone more advanced in the system. I read a commentator's really passionate case for Kai Bush, but I think Thorpe would be ahead of him at this point. So yeah, let me swap out Fetty and Flexen for Cannon and Thorpe. Long-haired, tall, young gentlemen who I don't know have long mullets sticking out of their cap. That'll be the aesthetic for the White Sox rotation.
Crochet, Clevenger, Cannon, Thorpe, Nastrini on July 23rd. Okay.
Right, because where else is it going to go?
Yeah.
How about you, I realize I've kicked out Soroka from the rotation in another month. Whatever.
How about you, Jim? What do you think the start rotation looks like for the White Sox in a month?
I would say that same pool, or a month or 2 months.
Either. If you don't think there's going to be a lot of change in the month, then what do you think it could look like in 2 months?
I would say 1 month. I would think Soroka's back in play, and perhaps, building upon my theory from last time around, like getting him good and angry. Maybe this is a case where, him letting it rip is, maybe they say like, all right, you're starting again. Take that reliever mindset you're taking right now where you're throwing 96, 97, see how long you can go with it. And we'll be watching, the metrics, the release points, etc. Make sure that nothing's getting out of hand, and we'll relieve you with like Jared Schuster as necessary. Just because they really have nothing to lose. Probably Soroka has nothing to lose in terms of, seeing what this newfound velocity, how long it can last. So maybe that's one theory for how they handle him. 2 months from now, same pool, except for maybe I'll throw in Jairo Iriarte here in terms of somebody right now, probably his good starts, I think, are better or at least more numerous than I expected when the White Sox acquired him. Like he seems to be either like great or sketchy with his control. Like he's either walking, one guy, two guys, or he's walking, 6 guys in 5 innings. So he's coming off 2 great starts in a row, and given Charlotte being a tough place to pitch, I could see maybe the White Sox calling directly from one of those, Thorpe, Iriarte, etc. Just maybe giving them a direct audition from Birmingham, and then maybe sending them back to Charlotte if things don't go well. But otherwise, Charlotte right now is Cannon, Nastrini. If one of them is there, then you're looking at like Chad Kuhl, Jake Woodford, et cetera, like the guys who have been around and aren't going to be part of a future. So maybe they, pull that move that Paul Janisch has been talking about, not limited to Brian Ramos, where they go directly to the veterans.
Well, we are going to take a quick break for a word from our sponsors. But coming up next, let's preview the upcoming series for the Chicago White Sox as they head home for a 7-game homestand with the first 4 against the Baltimore Orioles over Memorial Day weekend on the Sox Machine podcast. Game Time, as you know, is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seats, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. The Chicago White Sox are back home this Memorial Day weekend, which should be great weather in Chicago, especially Saturday and Sunday. With the 7-game homestand, plenty of games to go to at Guarantee Rate Field, and Saturday's game against Baltimore will be a hot ticket, as it's Luis Robert Jr. bobblehead day. Game Time has tickets starting at $11 for that Saturday game, or you could sit behind home plate at section 135 for $55 a seat. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use our promo code SOXMACHINE for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use our promo code SOXMACHINE for $20 off. Game Time. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
This is the story of the one. As head of maintenance at a concert hall, he knows the show must always go on. That's why he works behind the scenes, ensuring every light is working, the HVAC is humming, and his facility shines. With Grainger's supplies and solutions for every challenge he faces, plus 24/7 customer support, his venue never misses a beat. Call quickgrainger.com or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Welcome back to the Sox Machine podcast. The Baltimore Orioles now arrive into town to face the Chicago White Sox, and the Orioles are 29-18, and they have found themselves 2.5 games back of the New York Yankees in the American League East. And the reason is that they have lost their last 3. They just got swept by the St. Louis Cardinals. It's the first series sweep suffered by Baltimore in over 100 series. So they're looking for a bounce-back series, and boy, what better team to face than the Chicago White Sox when you need to bounce back. Your pitching probables for this series, Thursday night at 6:40 p.m. Central Time. Grayson Rodriguez will take the ball against Mike Clevenger. Friday night, this is an Apple TV broadcast. 6:40 p.m. Central Time start. Corbin Burns will be taking the ball for the Orioles against Chris Flexen. Note, if you have tickets for this game, rain is in the forecast, so just pay attention to the weather before you arrive to the ballpark. The White Sox on Saturday and Sunday will be starting at 1:10 p.m. Central Time, so quick starts. Dean Kramer will take the ball for Baltimore on Saturday against Eric Fetty for the White Sox, and on Sunday it's Kyle Bradish against Garrett Crochet. So again, Baltimore could use a bounce-back series, but the White Sox do have Fetty and Crochet pitching at back-to-back games, and Baltimore's offense is going to be the big story in this 4-game series. They are second in the majors in home runs hit. They have hit 69. They have a team 732 OPS, but the on-base percentage for Baltimore is just 300. That ranks 26th in Major League Baseball. They are not walking a ton. Gunnar Henderson is fueling that home run surge for the Orioles. He has 16 homers this season. He's just one behind Kyle Tucker, the Houston Astros, for the Major League Baseball lead. And the Orioles have 9 hitters with at least 90 plate appearances this season. 8 of those 9 hitters have a WRC plus greater than 100. The White Sox only have 4 hitters that have a WRC plus greater than 100. So, Jim, let me test your trivia. Name the 4 White Sox hitters that are better than league average.
Paul DeYoung.
1.
Tommy Pham.
Yes, that's 2.
Corey Lee.
That's 3.
Are these qualified hitters or any hitters?
At least 90 plate appearances.
They're players. Would it be Sheets?
Yes, you got all 4. Congratulations. Yes, Tommy Pham, Gavin Sheets, Corey Lee, and Paul DeYoung are the only hitters in the Chicago White Sox that are better than league average with at least 90 plate appearances. Hell, with at least one plate appearance with the way that this season has gone for the White Sox. So, James, you got a Baltimore Orioles team probably angry. They just got swept by the St. Louis Cardinals, and they are looking for a bounce-back series. Where should White Sox fans find hope in this upcoming series against the Orioles? Great response. So, Jim.
Austin Hayes doesn't look good. I don't know. I feel like they're going to walk Adley Rutschman like 10 times this weekend. The Sox have surprisingly only the 7th highest walk rate in baseball, but just south of 10%. What's the optimism? The Crochet goes in the series. Certainly this is kind of a lefty heavy like Orioles lineup that he would probably take advantage of a decent amount. I'd be surprised if there are 2 Fetty clunkers in a row. It's a better team than they are. I don't know. They're probably not going to go great, but it's really hard to get swept 4 games in a row, even if the White Sox have made it look like that. Like at some point, the Orioles are going to roll out a Sunday lineup. Hopefully, it's going to be like the lineup they put out to Wednesday against the Cardinals had like Ramon Urias in it, and Austin Hayes and James McCann, and very soft bottom third. Anthony Santander has not really got it going all season yet. Though I don't think I think the White Sox can only dream of like one of their slugging cornerstones having a 695 OPS. That would not get any questions asked about it the way we asked about like Benintendi and Vaughn. I just think at some point the Orioles are going to conserve resources and put out one of their weaker lineups, and that would be an opportunity to take 1 out of 4. A split is not impossible with the starting pitching they've had, and they'll probably play better defense now with more Dominic Fletcher in center and less Sheets in right, but it's not a good matchup. It's not a good situation. I would say the most vulnerable starter they had, John Means, and he left with an injury, and he won't factor into the series. So they'll have to face Corbin Burns and Kyle Bradish instead, and I don't know how fun that will be.
This is my new favorite thing, Jim, is to put James just put him right under the microscope. Magnifying glass, he's the ant, just asking really dumb softball questions to him. When it comes to this Baltimore series, though, you mentioned, Jim, that at some point in the season, instead of just like focusing on the White Sox, you're more watching the opponent and trying to learn what they are doing. And hopefully the White Sox are also paying attention to what the best teams are doing, so they can apply that to their ball club. So maybe in a few years, the White Sox look as strong as the Orioles do. I like the 2000 White Sox lineup. I'm not the 2000. Well, yeah, the 2000 White Sox lineup, but I meant the 2020 White Sox lineup. That lineup looked pretty stacked, even though it was a shortened season. As a fan, you had to have confidence in the offense because the White Sox only had 2 starting pitchers that season. But when watching this Orioles team, what I'm going to be looking for, Jim, is just, I don't want to say that I want the White Sox to get swept. I just want White Sox fans to see this is a rebuild that's coming to fruition that is sustainable and I think will last 3 to 5 seasons. And the importance of maybe holding on to players and not trading everyone is a good lesson to follow, because that's been working for Baltimore.
Yeah, I think part of it you can maybe learn from it. Part of it's just if you want to be entertained. And if you are a baseball fan and the White Sox are not providing you baseball entertainment, some of these opponents can. Kind of like going back to the Yankees series and the White Sox looking outclassed, there were some lessons there in terms of like the value of home runs and just how far behind the White Sox are right now and actually being able to hit for power. And then watching Aaron Judge and Juan Soto do their things, like that's just fun. That's good quality baseball entertainment. So you look at the Orioles and Adley Rutschman and Gunnar Henderson and such, and think like, yeah, those are good baseball players. I'll pay to watch them. I will pay to watch, maybe Andrew Benintendi right now, or I'm not fired up about Zach Deloach coming up, but at least I'll have the ability to watch the best of the best in person. So that's kind of how I look at it. I think the White Sox are maybe a year or a draft away from maybe having any kind of ducks in a row to replicate what the Orioles are doing, but certainly, aspirational kind of stuff for your dream journal, watching what's happening here. But I think the Yankees series is kind of what I have in mind. And I guess I'll put this out there as Anthony Santander having like a Bo Bichette series as now he's turning it around facing the White Sox, because there always seems to be like one guy a series who's been scuffling all year and then uses the White Sox to feel better about himself.
Well, yeah. How did Bo Bichette finish the series? It seems like he got a hit every single time he was at bat.
I don't think he did.
The White Sox.
Technically,
he didn't, but it felt that way.
I do think while the Orioles like current status is like very enviable, the like sheer like aggressiveness of their rebuild and like how hard they were tanking for so many years, especially like off the, not that that's like an unsuccessful method or like would be necessarily like a bad idea. I just think off like the cusp of these last 2 years, I don't want to say it would kill people, but maybe destroy their minds of this fan base in a way where not everyone would like be the same person who came out on the other end who saw it. Like I think 4 years of like the worst of the Orioles, like intentionally inflicted upon this group would break a lot of people. I'm getting enough text already from Tom Fornelli pretending to be a Giants fan that like I don't know how many more people I would be feeling.
Why the Giants? Why is Tom out of all, or why the Giants?
I ask him this a lot, and I just get responses of like Luis Matos highlights. So like I feel like he doesn't think I deserve to know.
Does he like mediocre? Like, because the Giants are 24-26.
Right, that's what I said. But he feels like it's easy watching hours for him on MLB TV. And
well, that's true.
I can imagine from the fan base, it's like, look to your left, look to your right. Both of these people will become the Joker.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how the White Sox fare against the Orioles. I'm not thinking it's going to go great for the White Sox. But at least, again, you can watch the Orioles. I'm sure it'll be some high-scoring games for Baltimore. It's Memorial Day weekend, so it'll be a lot of fun, at least at the ballpark, hanging out with everybody. Can't wait to see everybody in the stands. And, again, just watch the weather on Friday. Do not get Reinsdorfed. Arriving to the ballpark and watch that game get canceled, and Saturday becomes a doubleheader. Just be mindful of the weather Friday night for the Corbin Birds for Baltimore against Chris Flexen game for the White Sox. And again, if you're planning on watching that on TV, that is going to be on Apple TV.
Here's my spin. They took 3 out of 4 from the Guardians at home, who have a better record and a better run differential and have scored more runs this season.
See, you did it. Orioles. You found it. Right.
I don't know how they've scored more runs than Baltimore Orioles, having watched that series, but they have.
You found a way, James. I am so proud of you. I knew you could find a reason to be optimistic. The White Sox have surprised us already once. Maybe they could do it again. The last thing I want to touch on, and Jim, I know that you're going to be right about this on SoxMachine.com in the morning, but in the American League Central, suddenly, since we last spoke on Monday, looking around Major League Baseball, and a lot of attention was on the Minnesota Twins. The AL Central has suddenly become a 2-team race that the Guardians and the Kansas City Royals have added quite a bit of distance between them and the Minnesota Twins and the Detroit Tigers. The Kansas City Royals are off to one of the greatest starts in their franchise history. They are 32-19. The Guardians are 33-17. And folks, the Guardians and Royals are the second and third best teams in the American League, just behind the New York Yankees, as both the Guardians and Royals have won 6 straight games. Jim, what the hell is going on in Cleveland and Kansas City? Because I was not expecting this.
Yeah, it's funny. Like the Royals have won 6 games in a row and have gained nothing in the standings because the Guardians have won 6 in a row as well. So you can look at it in terms of like the Royals feeling really great about themselves and also probably maybe slightly frustrated at the fact that some of their best baseball is not quite getting them where they want to be. But yeah, I've had this kind of fascination with the Royals for a couple of weeks now, trying to figure out if they're good or just exceptionally good at pump sling. And well, the case of like sweeping the Tigers, swept the Tigers, and I think I saw a stat that they didn't trail over their 6 game homestand. I think they're tied for a little bit in some of their games, but just took the lead and never let it go. And sometimes you look at a record of being, only 6-9 against teams above 500, and then you see them, kick the Tigers 3 games below 500 by sweeping them, and you think, well, so sometimes, that record is. Has something to do with you doing the damage on them yourself. So, yeah, I think the Royals are earning it. I think the Royals are, as much as we joke about the White Sox, basically copying the Royals' notes, I think there is something instructive here in terms of, adding pitching, adding not top of line pitching, but pitchers you can do something with, or pitchers who had shown some promise and effectiveness, like a Seth Lugo type, and saying, let's give them a little bit more rope, a little bit more money, invest in them some more, believe in them, and we can get a full season's worth out of a guy who's been a little bit on the cusp of rotation here and there. So if you want to look at, we talked about it with the Orioles, like what you can learn from, the Royals are probably closer. I think the Guardians are not quite there because the Guardians have always just been good at what they do, which is just producing pitchers either out of thin air or whole cloth, whatever metaphor you want to use, and figuring an offense that works well enough around that pitching staff. But the Royals, given just how fast they've turned around, they have some athleticism that I think is the playing fast that Pedro Grifol espouses, but can't. He's writing checks that his team can't cash with the roster he has in the field. That's probably closer to the turnaround that the White Sox want to engineer than anything the Orioles are doing with the years of tanking that's not allowed anymore. But yeah, it's fun to watch, as much as, some people that we know, their brains explode whenever Sal Perez gets praised for what he's doing, and what he isn't doing is getting ignored. Hitting homers, always good strategy. Playing good defense and having the kind of speed plus smart base running decisions also helps. So, yeah, I think it's a fun brand of baseball, and it's good to see. I think for the health of the game, some evidence that you don't need multiple losing years to turn it around, or at least you don't need to do it entirely through the draft. Sometimes you can do it through like signings where people say like, "What are you doing this for? That's kind of a waste," and then you realize like, "Oh, this team's maybe not 75 win good, maybe they're 85 win good, or maybe with the pace they're playing on right now, well beyond that."
Yeah, Bobby Witt Jr. is a star, so that's all the White Sox have to hope for, is that Colson Montgomery is actually Corey Seager, the next addition, and just becomes an instant star. That's how the White Sox get to where the Royals currently are, which is 32-19 to start the 2024 season. If they continue this pace, they're going to be buyers. The Kansas City Royals are going to be buyers at the trade deadline. And who could blame them right now, as they are chasing a Cleveland Guardians team that lost their best pitcher, Shane Bieber, after 2 starts, and the Guardians continue to chug along. The Twins, they would be the number 5 seed right now in the American League at 26-23. Tigers fans, if randomly you're listening to this, the Detroit Tigers are closer to the Chicago White Sox in the American League Central standings than they are to the Cleveland Guardians. That's not a position that you want to be in. So Detroit's definitely got some work to do, as they have lost 4 straight. They are 23-26, 9.5 games back of the Guardians. And for those that are still curious, the White Sox are 15-35. They're 18 games back of the Guardians. So they are farther back than the amount of wins that they actually have in 2024. We are covering a historical season, folks. That's what makes this fun. But that will wrap it up for this episode of the Sox Machine Podcast. Can't wait to talk to you guys after the Baltimore Orioles series. I'm sure that will be a dandy. Maybe the White Sox do surprise us, but have a wonderful Memorial Day weekend. We'll have a new episode for you guys on Monday as the Toronto Blue Jays come into town. And again, we'll look across Major League Baseball to see what is catching our attention, and let us know what is catching your attention as well for the next podcast. But thank you so much for listening to the Sox Machine Podcast. You can subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts, such as Spotify and Apple Music. You could also listen to the show on our YouTube page at youtube.com/Sox Machine. You can follow us on social media. We're on all the platforms at Sox Machine. Make sure to follow James. He will be at the next 7 games, covering the games for us at Garrett T. Wright Field. He is at JR Fegan, and you can follow me at SoxMachine_Josh. If you enjoy our work and you want more and you want full access to our White Sox coverage, sign up at patreon.com/Sox Machine. Big kudos to James. He has wrote excellent features this week, not only just like Garrett Crochet, but I also love the Drew Thorpe feature as well, where he talked to Thorpe's college coach and he talked to current Birmingham Barons manager Sergio Santos about Drew Thorpe. That's the type of coverage that we can provide now at Sox Machine by having James with us, and you can gain full access again and help support us by signing up at patreon.com/Sox Machine. Monthly plans start at $5. The Sox Machine Podcast is a production of SoxMachine.com. You're on for all things Chicago White Sox baseball, part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. Alongside James Fegan and Jim Margulis, I'm Josh Nelson. Thanks for listening and watching.